let's say.
Like in Switzerland.
Yeah.
We couldn't agree more. Digital currencies. Are central banks missing out on the challenges, but also the opportunities represented by digital currencies?
I don't think so, no. So I think, of course we're following very carefully the whole question of digital currencies. It's not something that we're actively considering, other central banks more than we are. And for us, it raises significant issues that we'd want to see, carefully resolved. For example, if you think about a currency that was for the United States or for, frankly, a multinational currency, it would really need to be cyber secure because, it's one thing to be able to counterfeit paper currency. It's another thing to be able to hack into a cyber currency and create with a computer however much of it you want. So the cyber issues are quite daunting. It's also not clear to us that there's really demand for this. Consumers have plenty of payment options. They're not clamoring for this. I don't want to sound like I'm ruling it out, but I think there really are. There's another question, too, which is if people are leaving their money in a cyber currency and holding it there, they're not putting it in a bank. What happens with banks is people deposit their money and banks lend the money out. So what will happen to intermediation, the whole intermediation process? What will happen if everyone's just, investing in this cyber currency? So I would say, look, we're in favor of financial innovation. We're following these things very carefully, but we don't see digital currencies from a central bank as something happening in the near term.
Thomas, how do you see it?
Well, we looked at that very carefully, and we have a similar view, probably. So we do not believe that it's a very good idea to have a central bank digital currency for the public at large, exactly for the same reason. And we also have a very efficient payment infrastructure in Switzerland, so there's almost no advantage to make a payment with a digital currency, central bank digital currency, for the public at large. What maybe a little bit a different situation. So if we have new financial market infrastructures where banks among them trade securities and you need to also create some new money that comes from central banks that make this system more efficient. So we are looking at that very carefully, but this is not yet sure. So it's not yet sure whether new forms of securities are more efficient than old ones and whether this new infrastructure actually need digital central bank currency. It's well possible that the link to the central bank may be as efficient as today and in this system. But it's a very important and very interesting question, and we're also happy to be part of this BIS Innovation Hub that looks at those issues very carefully, and I think it's very important that central banks are aware of all these innovations and about all the possibilities.
Absolutely, absolutely. What is your take on the Libra, the new Facebook currency with headquarters in Geneva?
So I want to start again by saying that we do want to see responsible financial innovation. We think that's key. We think that will enable people to be better served and drive costs out of the system. So it's important that we be open to that. I think, as I've said before about Libra, with Facebook's very large network of more than a couple billion people, a stable coin could be systemically important very quickly if it were to have wide adoption, and that's not a foregone conclusion. But because of that, we would think that Libra would need to be held to the highest standards. It could be systemically important right away, potentially, and because of that, it would have to be held to the highest regulatory and supervisory expectations. It is not obvious to see how that would happen under our current regulatory system. So it's the kind of thing where we've said this is not going to be a sprint to implementation. This is going to be a careful, thoughtful conversation about how we can do our job of protecting the public from cyber risk and all the other risks that come with something that's systemically important.
So if I take your answers all in all, you're quite optimistic. Is that true?
Well, about things in general, yes.
Yeah.
But I would say
About Libra.
you always want to be an optimist. But I would say Libra has a burden of proof to carry. Again, we're not we don't want to just be an obstacle about this, but I think it's appropriate for us to say what we think our expectations will be, and appropriately so, they'll be very, very high for something that could have such broad adoption, and they'll have to be met, and so that's the way to think about Libra, I believe.
Yeah. Murphy was also an optimist, as we know. Okay, thank you very much. I think we should